Hello, all my virtual friends. I want to talk to you around a few minutes because I have something important to tell you, and that's about the censorship. Yes, the censorship of my last emission that was brutally censored in Ranginkaman TV by the direct order of its director. And that was, of course, a very bad experience for me. I want you please to listen to this discussion that I just present. And be fair to judge about that, and you can react. I will be pleased to hear or to read your reaction. And of course, I will answer. The story starts when I had two dear guests, namely Mr. Kurish Daim from the leadership of the Iranian National Front, and Dr. Bijan Iftikhari, an economist and also a presenter like me, but for Iranian or Persian language. That was my last English televised discussion on this TV. And that was actually a horrible experience for me. The discussion was called Political Islam in Agony, because we believe the political Islam is something which is not desirable for us and must go to the dustbin of history. My two guests were, I said, Mr. Iftikhari from America and Mr. Zaim from Iran. And discussed, of course, in English because I'm supposed to present in this television only in English, French, and German, and not Farsi, my mother language. Actually, we started with French because the television is in France. But additionally, I added English and German, mainly for the second and third Iranian generations who are born or were brought up in one of these countries and do not possibly speak perfectly and fluently Farsi, the language of their parents or grandparents. So I thought that's a way to use a language they know better, to make them understand what is going in Iran and what is the real facts in Iran. Because other televisions or other media do not really show the real face of the regime, but somehow to put some lipstick on the pig or show the regime as not ugly, but somehow okay. So that was the reason I started expressing myself in different languages, and I invited, of course, Iranian or not non-Iranian people who used to speak one of these languages I was engaged with. So it was an important subject for me. Islamic politic in agony. But it was only aired a few hours on the television on 14th August. And only a few hours after airing by a staff of the television, it was removed. Later on, when I asked the reason, he said, the director called me and asked me to remove it, in fact, to censor it from the television, and a few days later from its YouTube. So the order was directly given from the director. And that is the problem that I want to share with you. That such a horrible attitude still exists in a democratic country like France by an Iranian who is the director of a television, and so-called an opposition television. And in fact, I was censored. Probably the director was not in line with one of my guests, not with me, because I've been there for many months and presenting over 30, I think, emissions in these 3 languages. But I think his anger was addressed to Mr. Zaim from the leadership of the Iranian National Front, who probably could not have the same ideas, the same political ideas with him, or he could not accept his position in the leadership. I regard the censorship in general, not only for this case. That is a specific individual case, but I generalized now the topic. I regard the censorship as an offensive attitude to freedom journalism, freedom expression of ideas, and also a bad treatment to all of us, me and as host and my 2 guests were victimized through this bad attitude. Such a censorship exists only in totalitarian regimes, like, for example, the Islamic regime, where the media, the televisions, all are censored, all are curbed under control of the Islamic regime, so that no voice can be raised against the Islamic regime, so that no protest can be heard for the fundamental rights of people, including the individual fundamentals, what to wear, what to eat, what to do, what to think. So, expression of political issues, of course, are absolutely censored in such a totalitarian regime, because it curbs and suppresses people to receive the news they need to raise their voice the news that the regime does not want to be promoted, to be heard by the oppressed people. Censorship actually alienates people from the outlets of news that can be used for them, can be used to encourage them to protest against the barbarian and dictatorial regime. Or censorship is used to marginalize the truth so that the truth can be deformed. I told at the first common program I had was as inauguration emission program in French language. I told the director of Ranginkaman that I am an independent activist and want to keep my independence as presenter. I told him and repeated a few times. And especially I must keep my independence as a presenter according to the laws and norms of free journalism. But since he did not respect my independence by censoring my last television talk, whatever the reason for him, of course, I stopped presenting my 3 languages TV talks in Ranginkaman from now on. My dear friends, let me express my points in this form that the common law principle of each democracy allows individuals to have the right by any means, by any conditions, to say and hear the truth. The truth is a key word in any democracy and in any free journalism or media. The principle of truth has been codified as expanded laws, constitutions, principles in many countries, in many groups of democratic groupments. And the freedom of express is a democratic right, not only for individual people, but also for all people. And that is the most important fundamental right, to have the freedom of express, to open my mind without having fear from the regime or someone else. Therefore, trustful presenters or journalists help other people to enjoy this freedom of thought, because they are themselves freedom lovers. And sometimes they even risk their life for this freedom. In a country like Iran, for example, the prisons are full of journalists, freedom lovers who do not want to be censored by the regime. So people want to say and hear the truth. That's a very normal sentiment, a very normal feeling of any individual, especially in a free world, in the free world. Truth which can be spoken and writing in any public debate and should not be censored. We, as several million Iranian diaspora in the democratic world, in France, in Germany, in Italy, in the United States, and so on, we must stand for the examples of free and open exchange of ideas and freedom of express, in order to inform our oppressed people about important issues so that they can make good choices and they can probably be encouraged to stand up there in Iran against the barbarian Islamic regime and demand their fundamental rights. This is why censorship, or even self-censorship, which normally exists as a complementary fact in a dictatorial regime, because when censorship is done, self-censorship will be also imposed through some psychological mechanisms, which are, of course, elaborated by think tanks of the Islamic, by the regime, no matter Islamic regime or any other totalitarian regime, under any system, any ideology or religion. So this is why censorship is something that threats to our people to be encouraged in their struggle, in their fair struggle against the barbarian regime. When censorship practiced by journalists or televisions, which is of course very amazing for me, that stifles the free flow of information and restricts badly knowledge of people. And let me tell you that the last point, which is more important, it ultimately brings grist to the mill of the Islamic regime. And that has been already experienced. It creates a void into which steps the Islamic regime or any totalitarian regime and its allies, of course, like all these think tanks abroad or apologists, or even I call them mercenaries, to propagate the agenda of the Islamic regime and to make people convinced not to react radically against the Islamic regime, even to promote a kind of absolute inaction, absolute pacifism, to stupefy the thoughts and the courage of people. I see it not only just in traditional authoritarian or totalitarian systems or regimes, but increasingly in the media of Iranian diaspora, like that of my experience with Ranginkaman. At the end, I live here under this speech, the link of the discussion which was censored but before recorded from our Zoom. And you can watch it and see if I have something I have done, or some of us, some of our three participants has done something wrong. There is no one single offensive word or immoral statement. The only judgment I can make here is the fact that the director of Ranginkaman does not tolerate freedom of ideas. And that is what is very contradictory to freedom and democracy, and what we desire for our country to have: freedom, democracy, human rights, secularism or racism, or all things that people of us now are fighting, are struggling for. That was just a few words for you, and I want you to see, to watch, and to react to this declaration. And I will, of course, answer you, and I will be pleased to see your fair reactions. And thank you for watching that.